we're talking about the Percy Jackson show. You realize what this means. We're talking about the Percy Jackson show. Guys, I have no words. I have just watched the 2-episode premiere of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and it was awesome. I cannot express how happy I am that we actually get a good adaptation and how excited I am for the future. From the comedy to the animation to the acting to the freaking god awesome writing, this show is absolutely brilliant. I'm so glad we're finally getting a faithful adaptation of The Lightning Thief. I gotta say, pretty much everything about the show landed perfectly. I was sitting in my living room, munching away at chocolate and Timbits, eating 10 Timbits in the span of like an hour, which I don't recommend, by the way. Forcing down junk food, watching the greatest thing I've ever seen, and I'm here to talk about it. So the first thing you should know about the Percy Jackson show is that absolutely everybody needs to watch it. And the second thing you should know about the Percy Jackson show is a little harder to name because there's a lot of great things about it. I'm gonna start off simple. The animation was absolutely gorgeous. The show put a lot of focus, especially at the beginning, on Percy's demigod vision and him seeing things that nobody else knows are there. I didn't really expect that because it wasn't focused on a lot in the books, but it makes a lot of sense when you actually have visual media at your disposal to really try to portray how things look to mortals versus how they look to demigods, and I really think they nailed it. The impact of the mist looks exactly as I imagined it. What comes to mind for me is the Culcus Bull near the beginning. Just absolutely flawless the way they did it with the camera angles, but really all of the scenes with monsters. Watching monsters that appear in later books and later parts of the story appearing at the beginning when Percy's a little kid was absolutely amazing. The scene with Blackjack on top of that building made me scream because I've seen it so many times in the trailer and it just made me so excited. But yeah, the Culcus Bull was cool as well. The animation of Grover's goat legs seemed perfectly natural. It wasn't distracting or anything. It just totally made sense. The animation of Mrs. Dodds disintegrating was absolutely out of this world. Huge props to the animation team. I don't think it's actually called the animation team, but props to whoever made this happen. Also this, and that, and definitely this. You are gods and I worship you. Now, the beginning of the story, establishing the characters and Percy's situation was all really great. I absolutely screamed during the beginning segment when Percy was explaining stuff.
Look, I didn't want to be a half-blood.
I screamed again when Grover was introduced. The dream segments were also really good. Just kind of this endless void all around Percy and a voice whispering to him. It's just so epic. We think of dreams as very small and separate, so for Percy to be in this strange otherworld in his dreams that seems to stretch on for miles when these ancient powerful beings are reaching out to him is something really awesome. It's a shame how passively they mentioned ADHD and dyslexia because a lot of people really connected to the series because of that. The way they were written in the books was really awesome, so the fact that they were just casually name dropped by Luke once.
And ADHD and dyslexia. Demigods just process reality differently.
Is a little weird. They deserve more focus than that. Although, to be fair, it does come up in the dialogue of Percy talking about how things are hard for him because of his ADHD and dyslexic traits.
I'm used to the world feeling weird to me, like a puzzle with half the wrong pieces. I try to pay attention, and I really try, but then I'm daydreaming.
Whether or not it was good that they avoided naming it and instead just described it depends on who you ask. Sally Jackson was written absolutely amazingly. The series kept in the blue food, and then Percy burns them later on. It was so perfect. They remembered the blue food. They were like, yes, we're including the blue food. We're making a point of including the blue food because we're awesome. Sally being really sassy and standing up to Gabe was awesome to watch, but not necessarily a good portrayal of how things were in the book. In the book, Gabe is, yes, lazy, but he's also scary. And for him to just be dismissive of Percy isn't necessarily scary. The scene that makes Gabe kind of unconvincing for me is when Percy's mom is talking to him and yells at him that if he wants the peppers on his sandwich, he needs to ask nicely. That's not to say Sally can't stand up for herself or argue with him, but that argument ending with Gabe kind of bowing down to her will definitely doesn't give off the impression of someone who is intimidating. Don't get me wrong, knowing how much of a terrible person Gabe was in the books, it was very satisfying to watch Sally put him in his place. But it doesn't really give you the impression that Gabe is someone that Percy and his mom are scared of. And in the book, he is abusive and meant to be someone that they're afraid of. They'll probably make him scary when we see him again at the end of the series, but I didn't really get the impression that Gabe was that intimidating. The meanest thing we see him do is act like a jerk to the plumber, and then the plumber telling Percy,
I'm walking out, you're walking in. I should be apologizing to you.
Again, he's dismissive towards Percy, which is hard in its own way, but Gabe in the books was portrayed as abusive, verbally and physically. You need to show he's actually having a difficult impact on Percy's life. Percy is being bullied at school and at home, and I wasn't really getting that impression. However, speaking of the sandwich reference, we got a freaking D'Angelo reference in the first episode! It's happening, guys! We got it! It's happening! They knew what we wanted and they didn't let us down! They referenced Bianca and Nico in the first episode. They knew some people would be waiting for that. Not only did the show creators knew we'd be waiting for that, they didn't wait until the Lotus Hotel to give it to us. They delivered in the first episode. It's probably gonna come up again in the Lotus Hotel scene, but I love that they mentioned it when no one was expecting it. They just threw it in so casually. When I realized that Sally Jackson said the D'Angelos, I completely lost it. I was so excited! Also talking about how amazing Sally Jackson is, her sitting outside her window, just like letting the rain fall on her face and looking like completely calm and happy because it reminds her of Poseidon. I love that clip. And then the first thing she does is go over and hug Percy. Grover as well was really great as a character. Ariane Simhadri did an absolutely amazing job bringing him to life. Walker Scobell and Leah Jeffries were perfect for Percy and Annabeth too, but Grover's actor was the one who really caught my attention as a great actor. He was just so great. I think it was a combination of him and the writing, but they did Grover's personality justice. Every single clip of him is like so on point. Ariane Simhadri, you deserve to go far in the acting world. You absolutely slayed this. Grover also delivers his lines very naturally, like when he casually drops the word camp. I didn't even think twice about it until Percy was like, wait, what, camp? And I was like, oh right, they haven't explained it to him yet. Fun times. Percy, of course, as Percy, sounded less weird in my head. Walker Scobell, of course, as Percy was also great. His acting when he told Sally to stop treating him like a little kid was absolutely perfect. The tears in his eyes, he really did good with that scene. And just him generally feeling unwanted and uncared for, the actor really sold that well. They did a really good job portraying like Percy getting bullied and things related to that. The scene where Percy burns the blue candy to talk to his mom was perfect. Not just because of the emotional depth of that scene, but because it's kind of heartbreaking to think about how he just doesn't understand how it works. Like in the book, it only works if you're trying to contact a god. It's not supposed to work with mortals. And I don't know if it's supposed to be the same in the show, but that just got me thinking like, oh my god, poor Percy. He just doesn't understand, and he's like trying to contact his mom with the blue food, like, ah! Annabeth hasn't shown up much yet, but the scenes that she has been in have been awesome. She is the only main character that when she was introduced, I didn't immediately start squealing because I was just too busy being in awe. I didn't expect that at all. That's a pretty cool way to introduce her. I mean, aside from the whole,
You must be the one.
and
You drool when you sleep.
they included all of her perfect first lines while giving her an original introduction. I don't necessarily think she needed an original introduction. She could have been introduced a little earlier like she was in the book, but it's still really cool how they introduced her because I genuinely wasn't expecting it, and most fans probably weren't either. In the trailer, you can see Percy kind of looking over at her, but I think you have to look really closely to actually tell like what scene that is. Props to Rick Riordan anyway for making something that fans wouldn't expect out of something that they definitely did expect. The way Annabeth just came in as a know-it-all was godly, and she just straight up tells our boy, yeah, you didn't know what you were doing. I know you can't explain this. It's okay. I just need you to be on my Capture the Flag team. We're doing this. And he was like, I like how they didn't portray her as outright mean like the books did. I mean, don't get me wrong, Annabeth is amazing, but in the books there are some moments where she comes across as needlessly mean, and in the series she more just strikes me as tough and motivated. Yeah, she's willing to make fun of Percy when he does something stupid, but she's more focused, which I think fits very well with her character and her motivations. Wish I had more to say about Annabeth, but yeah, thus far she's being her awesome self, and I hope we get to see more of her being her awesome self in future episodes. I wouldn't mind if they revealed revealed a bit of her vulnerability a bit earlier on. I really want to see more of Annabeth's character in its entirety and not just her being a genius. I need my heart to break for this character at least one time. My heart is already broken for Percy. It's broken for Grover from the first scene. I just need my heart to break for Annabeth and our trio is complete. Luke's introduction, of course, was good, and him being really friendly and everything. They kind of made him, I guess, less bitter than he was in the book. I'm thinking of the book and the musical, and the musical especially, they made it very obvious that Luke was the bitter one. This portrayal of Luke seems really subtle about his villainy, which isn't a bad portrayal of Luke by any means, it's just different. And what I like about it is that it shows he's not the only one who resents the gods. Thus far, it seems like he feels pretty much the same way everybody else does about the gods, which really adds a lot of perspective to his eventual betrayal and what Percy does afterwards.
They like the smell of burnt mac and cheese.
I like the smell of begging.
Luke telling Percy that he and Annabeth have been family ever since in that one scene. Oh my god, that tugged at my heartstrings. The interaction between Luke and Annabeth also tugged at my heartstrings. It's so surface level, but you can tell like they've known each other forever. Like, oh my god. Every scene where these two are together just works. Every scene where these two are together reminds me so much of the freaking tragedy that was the books. Oh damn. Clarisse was also pretty well done. I feel like they were a little in her face about her motivations. Like when she said she just needed him to admit that he made up the story about the Minotaur so that he didn't look cooler than her. Like, just make us understand that she wants Percy to look like a wimp. We can figure out the rest for ourselves. You don't need to be so obvious about it. I was a little worried about how well Clarisse in the show portrayed the energy of Clarisse in the books, especially in the bathroom scene where Clarisse had her siblings try to shove Percy's head in a toilet. It's one thing for them to be there and to help her, but for her to just like be watching and posing there while they like stuff his head down the toilet, it just doesn't fit the super muscular, super strong, physically stronger than everybody else at camp image that I had of her. Clarisse is far more physically strong than strategic, so if she wanted revenge on Percy, she would beat him up herself. She wouldn't get her siblings to do it for her. However, that was just my first impression. During the capture the flag scene, I was like, oh yeah, this is Clarisse. Like, that smile while she's beating him up, I saw that, I was like, oh yeah, we found our Clarisse. I kept expecting better from her because I forgot that you're actually supposed to hate her at first. In regards to the claiming scene that came afterwards, it is a little disappointing that no one actually saw him beat up Clarisse. Annabeth shoving him into the water definitely wasn't as epic in the scene in the book, but it does tell you something about this girl's cleverness. What I would have done was had him kind of stumble into the water and you see that it's beginning to heal him, but he doesn't notice. And then afterwards, when the scene is done, Annabeth pushes him into the water because she noticed it, and then you get the cleverness of Annabeth and the glory of the water. Chiron was really great. Watching him say, like, I've dealt with many kids in your situation, knowing that he's talking about demigods was really interesting and cool. The scene where he was like, Percy Jackson, we've been expecting you, and like the callback to the beginning was really good. At first I didn't know how I felt about the fact that Percy passed out after the Mrs. Dodds incident, but I really like it after seeing how they used it to amp up the scene where he arrives at camp. But yeah, Chiron is a really cool character. Thus far we haven't seen any interactions between him and Annabeth, which, considering that she's probably the main character who cares about him the most, I would really like to see that. I don't know if we're gonna see that in episode 3. Speaking of the next episode, I'm really curious how Annabeth is gonna join this little ragtag. How's she gonna come along? Because Annabeth isn't a tag along. She's gonna make herself known, and I want to see how she does that. Also, this might be the first time she calls him Seaweed Brain. Mr. D was interesting. It's weird watching Mr. D have this like high-pitched voice. I don't dislike it, it's just really strange to see because I always imagined him having this like really cranky sort of voice. So him just having this high-pitched like annoying voice is really funny to me, especially since every time I hear that particular voice, the only thing I can think of is I have wind chimes where my ding-dong should be. The only weird thing about Mr. D, in my opinion, is watching how passionate he becomes about the wills of gods who aren't him.
The fate of the world hangs in the balance.
Like, yeah, I get that the big three are more powerful than you, but why do you care so much? Dionysus in the book is just always very laid back, always annoyed by demigods. The only reason Mr. D would get passionate about a conversation with a demigod is to make that conversation end as quickly as possible. If he got mad in a scene like this, I would expect to see like purple flames in his eyes or some other indication of his ability to inflict insanity. Something that shows his powers and something that shows that he's about to turn you into a dolphin if you don't listen to him. Now I want to talk about the comedy. The comedy slaps. Every single comedic moment is perfect. Not only is it hilarious, but it fits Percy Jackson energy so perfectly. Percy Jackson humor is its own brand, and Aryan Simhadri and Walker Scobell bring that to life. The comedy when Percy sees Grover's goat legs is so funny. Like, Percy's face and his attitude, and Grover just going on and on, like, we all need to stay calm. How are you feeling? I'm feeling pretty calm. It was perfect. The underpants joke with the Minotaur had me freaking cackling.
He is brutal. He is relentless.
He's wearing underpants.
It's so good. It's so funny. Percy flossing on the cliffside had me absolutely dying of laughter. Let's see, what other commentary do I have? This one Hephaestus kid cosplaying as Leo was pretty cool. I like that they kept the design of the Yankees cap. The sort of golden animation of Riptide is really cool. I'm wondering how it's going to affect the animation of Imperial Gold when they introduce that, because they are doing Heroes of Olympus, and I don't care that it's not confirmed. I will believe what I want to believe. I also just have to talk about the animation at the end. I was so in awe. I just love it so much. I want to see the animation in future seasons. I need this animation. This animation is godly, please. I need this animation to be in future seasons. I need for it to be adapted to future seasons. I have a video on my phone of myself just freaking out. They knew what they were doing with that banger outro. They knew what they were saying. They knew they were saying, you've waited for this for a decade, and here it is in all its glory. They knew what they were saying, and I love them for it. This almost feels like they're saying you're welcome. This feels like a you're welcome gift. This feels like everyone who worked on the show saying, we know how long you've been waiting for this. We know how much this means to you. We know we absolutely nailed it, and now we're going to make your eyes fall right out of your head. And that's exactly what they did. On that note, I know a lot of Percy Jackson fans are gonna see these 2 episodes and they're gonna be like, we did it. We made this happen. They have impressed us and we are thrilled with it. And I agree, the fandom did do this. We made this adaptation happen, and we made it be faithful. But it was everyone who worked on the show who did the real work. We've already congratulated ourselves plenty of times for making this happen. After congratulating ourselves for 3.5 years straight, we should probably give some credit where credit is due. Now we should congratulate the people who actually put this on screen for us. So thank you from the bottom of my heart to everyone who was involved in any way with the production of this show. You've given the Percy Jackson fandom what we've wanted for so long. You've made something we'll always cherish, and no matter what way you were involved in it, thank you. Thank you for making this dream come true. You've made something beautiful, something we've always wanted, something that will have its ups and downs, but will inspire and touch the hearts of so many people. The stories of Percy Jackson have had an impact on so many, and now thanks to you, they'll have an impact on so many more. We can't wait to see what you'll do with this next.